Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing a video on Krug Champagne, and this was caused because I was recently invited to a tasting of Krug Champagne at Published Name. It has to do with their yearly challenge of Krug Ambassador restaurants, and I'll go through that in a bit more detail. But let's talk a little bit about the Krug Champagne. It's a very unique champagne. The house was established in 1843 by Joseph Krug in Reims, and he was a visionary nonconformist because most people at that time were either bottling vintage champagne or just a non-vintage champagne. But he thought it would be neat to kind of keep wines in a cellar and have an extensive reserve and then kind of have different years. So in fact, he created kind of a hybrid between a vintage and non-vintage, which is kind of very unique. So I'll have to explain that a little bit more in detail a little bit later. It is currently owned, the majority ownership is now owned by LVMH, who also own Moet, Veuve, Ruinart, and Ace of Spades. Although the Krug family is still actively involved in key decisions of the house, it doesn't manage the day-to-day operations. So with the original approach of Joseph Krug, he wanted to go beyond the notion of vintage, and he just wanted generous expressions of champagne. And so also he wanted kind of one level of champagne. So basically Krug is very interesting. They create one Grande Cuvée white or regular champagne. They create one rosé. They create a vintage champagne, and then some specialized, but very basic. You get a couple of different offerings. That's about it. It's interesting because Krug is actually a non-vintage champagne, but it's actually a blend of about 120 plots of property. It's usually about 10 different vintages. So you can call it non-vintage, but it's actually vintage champagne. It's a blend of the best of each year. And because of that, they can release champagne every year. The champagne is basically aged for at least 6 years to produce a bottle of Grande Cuvée. You have to kind of have champagne or grapes from about 16 years ago, because they use about 10 different vintages of champagne, and then they actually age them another 6 years. So it's really interesting. Characteristically, I would say Krug is very food friendly. It's very heavy. Because of the aging, it's got a little bit more maturity and complexity than most champagnes. On the palates, there's also a fresh fruit and citrusy component to it, and that freshness is linked to grape selection. And the residual sugar content is no more than 6.5. So it's interesting because it's not a extra brut champagne. Likewise, it is not a very kind of sweeter type of champagne like, let's say, Ace of Spades would be very high in terms of the residual sugar. So it's really, to me, the perfect food wine, and it goes with so much stuff, and it was so neat to see their champagnes paired with the great food offered at Published Name, which is a 1-star Michelin restaurant here in Vancouver. Here is a lineup of what we drank in this lunch at Published Maine. And why this happened is that Krug has these ambassade chefs all around the world, which kind of serve their champagnes. And every year they challenge these chefs to use a ingredient, and this year is flour, and to create a dish. So for Krug Week at Published Maine, they will have Krug by the glass offered. I think it's $100 a glass for the Grande Cuvée and $150 for the rosé, which isn't bad. It's 5 ounces, and if you look at it, that's about equivalent. If you drink the whole bottle, it's about $500 or $600. That's what you would have to pay for Krug anyways, and Krug is actually very difficult to find. Published on Maine, 1-star Michelin restaurant in Vancouver. I've done a review of that restaurant. I'll put it at the end of this video. They are one of 2 ambassade chefs in Canada. The other one is in Montreal. So really neat to try and taste the wines. I've also been fortunate in the last little while to drink a lot of Krug, so I have some experience with both the Rosé and the Grande Cuvée. So it was really interesting to actually taste them again, and also with structured pairings. You're kind of going to get two for the price of one here in this review, because you're also going to get a review published on Maine, or introduction to the restaurant, which is a really obviously a very fine restaurant in Vancouver. So the chef started off with some amuse-bouches that were not on the menu. Some of these items will not be on their regular menu, but you can kind of see the quality of their food. So on the left here was a cucumber savion. On the center top there is kind of a lamb boat. And then on the bottom is something that you might be able to see in their restaurant. It's kind of a abelskiver, which are kind of Danish donuts stuffed with kind of herbs and things like that. So nice bite-sized morsels to start off the lunch. We started off the lunch with the 171st edition of the Krug Grande Cuvée. I have experience with this champagne because I drank it a couple of months ago in Hong Kong and had my taste notes from that one. So 171st edition, it uses champagnes from between 2000 and 2015. 135 wines were used from 12 different vintages. The blend was 45% Pinot Noir, 37% Chardonnay, 18% Pinot Noir. So I actually enjoyed it more when I was in Hong Kong. Perhaps it was the food, perhaps it was the temperature. I had it with Asian food, with kind of suckling pig, and it was really great. And that's one thing about Krug. It actually goes very, very well with food. So my notes in Hong Kong were good acidity, creamy with grapefruit, citrus, raspberry, and ginger taste, hazelnut, and brioche in the aftertaste. And I, at that time, rated 95 points. With this one, again, I had citrus with some almond paste and lemon notes. On the aroma, I had spring bloom of flowers and again citrus. But I rated it at 93 points. Still a great wine. But I thought, again, I thought it was a little bit cold, and then I couldn't get the right temperature. In my mind, I couldn't get it quite right in terms of the temperature, but still an exceptional champagne. It was paired with a summer tomato panzella with burrata and burnt citrus. Beautiful salad, looks beautiful. Published on Maine is known for its vibrancy in terms of its artistry. When we create dishes, the burrata was good. The tomatoes were nice and fresh. And that citrusy element, that acidity went very well with champagne. But again, the characteristic of Krug, in my mind, is it's got a lot of weight, a lot of body, good citrusy notes, and really can stand up to very, very heavy foods. So I really like that pairing. Here is a quick video of the expert staff pouring the Krug. And the next champagne we had was the 170th edition of the Grande Cuvée. This is a blend of 195 wines from 12 different vintages from 1998 to 2014. The final blend was 51% Pinot Noir, 38% Chardonnay, and 11% Pinot Noir. You have to also remember that all these Grande Cuvée wines are also aged 6 years before release. So again, that's why it almost takes quite a long time to kind of produce this champagne, and it's only be able to be done because Krug has such an extensive reserve library of their champagnes that they can fall back on. And so this one I thought was a little bit richer compared in flavor to the 171st edition. I thought it was more creamy, more developed, the same elements that you had with the 171st edition, but I thought there was more dried apricot and marzipan on the palate. So I rated it 94 points. I think it's because they have a little bit more wines in this champagne, so I think it is more complex, it's more developed, slightly, by a hair, and really enjoyed the champagne, obviously. It was paired with a smoked steelhead with preserved flowers and whey, and Beautiful presentation. I thought the steelhead was done in terms of the actual texture, and the cooking was done perfectly. Need it to be not too dry and not like raw. So that's a fine line, and so they got it perfect here. It was really good. Next champagne that we had was the Rosé. And the Rosé was only started to be produced in 1983. One comment that I think people have made is like, sometimes I'll talk about this young champagne is too young. And the comment that I got from another viewer was that, hey, it's already aged 6 years or 10 years. Why would it be young? Well, these champagnes continue to evolve. So that's what I mean by young. The 170th, 171st edition of Krug will still continue to get better. But going back to this champagne, this was the 27th edition, a blend of 38 wines from 9 years, from 2005 to 2015. The blend was 57% Pinot Noir, 23% Chardonnay, 20% Pinot Meunier. And I just was fortunate with a subscriber to drink the 24th edition, which is a little bit older. And I thought this one needs a little bit more time, but very consistent notes with the 24th edition. I had rose petals, pink grapefruit, red currants, and smoked meat on the nose, honey, citrus, and black plums on the palate with a slight spicy oak aftertaste. And I noted that the rosé actually, I think, can hold up to heavier foods even better than the Grande Cuvée. And I rated it 96 points, which is the same rating I had for the 24th edition. So I really, really love the rosé of Krug. This was paired with chicken liver, and this was kind of something that you can be creative by yourself. The chef let us do that. So this is Executive Chef Gus Steinhofer Branson, who's kind of demonstrating the dish. So he had kind of 3 kind of chicken liver things, and then you could decorate them with, he had some rose petals, he had some kind of chives and things like that. So and he had some speculatus. So it was kind of, he decorated, but then also gave us the opportunity to do that. I didn't take a picture of what I did because it was definitely not what this looked like. But it was a fun play on things. And obviously the chicken liver, I thought best accentuated how heavy Krug is. Chicken liver is a heavy, kind of intense taste, but the rosé stood up so well to it, and in fact complemented it. So I really, really enjoyed that pairing. And I think this pairing really exemplified how heavy or how intense the flavors are with Krug Champagne. You don't feel it in terms of, it's not overwhelming, but when you have it with food, you can see how it stands up so well. I think partly it's the acidity. I think it's partly also the intensity of flavors and the grape selection that creates this very, very deep, complex champagne. Here is what they presented to us each individually. So they had the chicken livers on the left and then the accompaniments on the right, and you could kind of play around with them. And again, that's why I did not take a picture of my final product. It wasn't that artistic, but I just put everything on and ate it, and it was great. And because I'm called Trophy Wine Hunter, I had to make a Trophy Wine Hunter move. I ordered a bottle of 2006 vintage Krug off the published on main menu. I thought it was just a neat thing to do because you have a Krug representative there, you have some great food, and I can taste it against other Krug champagne. So I thought it was just a unique opportunity. So I thought, what the heck, let's do this. And so I chose the 2006 Krug off the menu from published on main. And according to Krug, Krug Vintage is not the selection of the best wines in a particular year, but rather the expression of that year. And so it comes from a single vintage, and this is, I would say, unusual for Krug, and it sits in Krug's cellars for at least a decade. And so for this vintage, the blend was 48% Pinot Noir, 35% Chardonnay, and 17% Pinot Meunier. It was aged 12 years in cellar compared to, I guess, the 6 or 7 years for the non-vintage Krug. My notes: mandarin oranges, almonds, maple syrup, nougat, and pink grapefruit. It was really smooth and creamy, so my rating was 98 points. For dessert, we had one of their signature desserts, which you can actually order off their regular menu for $14. It's called Hay, and this is aerated hay custard with green apple and chamomile. Very light, fluffy dessert. A great way to end the meal. All in all, what a wonderful opportunity to drink the Krug wines. For Krug Week, it will take place at Publish on Main between September 13th and the 22nd. They will be offering the 171st edition of the Krug Grande Cuvée for $100 for a 5-ounce glass, and the Krug Rosé, the 27th edition, for $150 a glass, a 5-ounce glass. They will also offer a full or half portion of the chicken liver dish to be paired alongside with the champagne. And so this is going to be a unique opportunity. As to whether the vintage champagne is worth it or not, it's, I think, about 1.5 times or 2 times as much as the Krug Champagne. Honestly, Krug Champagne is magnificent. The Rosé is magnificent. The vintage is magnificent. So I don't know if you can go wrong with any of them. I guess the most affordable option is your regular Grande Cuvée, which is exceptional. The Rosé, I don't know if I can say anything bad about that either. So I'm really caught because all of them are actually very, very good. And I guess if you have the means, go to the vintage. I would say that the Grande Cuvée by itself is already very, very stunning. So unless you really want to try the vintage, I don't think you really need to spend the extra money for a vintage Krug Champagne. That's not really their wheelhouse. They're really famous for their blending of different vintages. So I would go with that. But again, for a unique experience, go with the vintage. It is a special experience. Hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy drinking.